Yeah, the law of the military, which goes up to what we would call the militarization of the public sector. Because ordinarily you wouldn't expect the military to be in this. But even before you go to look at the military and its role in these public affairs, you need to look at also the enabling environment.
Yeah.
That before an election, there are many factors that constitute what we would call a free and fair election.
Sure.
One, those who are engaged, political actors, should have freedom of association, freedom of assembly. In other words, if you want to campaign or canvass for votes, you should be given an opportunity to go and express your ideas as a candidate to the Kawempe North electorate and tell them what are those ideas that you have as a would-be legislator you want to sell to the people. So that freedom should be there. Freedom of association, freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, and freedom of speech. We tend to find that such things are not really available in terms of candidates from the opposing side, and that's a big challenge. Now, when it comes into this other fact of the military, it makes it worse because that's not supposed to be the work of the military.
Actually,
that's work supposed to be of the police. But we see the military involvement, and military are not trained to deal with civilians.
Yeah.
And that's why they tell you their work is they shoot. They don't ask or they just shoot.
This is the Policy Digest, a Center for Policy Analysis podcast that explores how African societies are governed and how people and their leaders are shaping the future of their communities. Through candid conversations and insightful analysis, we aim to provide a deeper understanding of the political, economic, and social landscape of Africa. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the diverse and dynamic world of African governance.
Welcome everyone to this episode of the Policy Digest. Our Policy Digest operates under the CEPA, which is the Center for Policy Analysis. We are located in Ntinda, Sunatu Road. Today we have a distinguished guest who is going to talk about the human rights landscape and outlook in the country. But also we are going to benchmark the recently concluded Kawempe by-election as a case study through this conversation that we are going to have. Well, interestingly, yesterday, 2 bills were passed, and at the height of human rights injustices and violence that have marred the political structure of this country, this is the time that we have to get to expert analysis, especially for someone who has been in the civil society space for quite some time. And allow me introduce my guest today on this show. My guest is Mr. Kirenga Robert. Kirenga has contributed to strategic and policy direction as a member of the board of directors at various human rights organizations where he has enhanced their capacity. Robert is an astute professional as well as result-oriented. He's well experienced and skilled. Not only has he participated in the UN processes, but is also an expert in development management and human rights tools and processes. Robert currently works as the Executive Director of National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders, Uganda, and he has a vast experience of 17 years in institutional building, project management, capacity building in the private sector, civil society, public sector, and international organizations. Robert, welcome to the Center for Policy Analysis, but particularly the Policy Digest.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aine. Thank you for hosting me, and it's a pleasure to be here at CIPOSA.
Let's dive into this conversation. You have been in the civil society for quite some time, played so many roles. what is the state of civil society in Uganda at this particular time as we reflect on the past elections, but as well going forward, especially now that we are going to have elections early next year, 2026?
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Aine, for that question. I think the state of civil society currently can be best described as very shaky and not as vibrant as one would have expected because of the challenges, both internal and external challenges that they face. Internally, we have what we would call a shrinking civic space. That's the environment in which we could be participating in the social, political, and economic affairs of our country. And when we come to elections, we are really talking about the political affairs. Oftentimes, civil society is challenged as to where they derive their legitimacy. And this is from Article 38 of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda as amended, that states that citizens have a right to participate in the governance affairs of their country through either elected representatives or through civic organizations like yours or ours. So, to directly answer your question, the state is such that it is shaky. You know that resources to civil society have been dwindling. Donor priorities have, or the donor landscape has also equally changed. And therefore, civil society cannot be as vibrant as one would have expected. In terms of the shrinking space, we are talking about the laws and policies that are in place that should be enabling civil society to do its work. What we have right now in terms of laws and policies are not those that enable civil society to do their work, but rather to restrict our work and also to disenable us from carrying out our work. In terms of elections, we would appreciate the fact that we have a robust legal regime. We have a progressive constitution that provides us the various rights that we are entitled to as human beings under Chapter 4, including the right to vote, which is provided for in the same Bill of Rights. We also have ratified many international human rights instruments, like the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, that talks about the right to vote. We have the famous African Charter on Democracy that guides and provides principles that should be followed in terms of elections. Those we have signed and ratified. However, it's one thing to sign and ratify an instrument or to have these laws in our constitution, and it's another thing to have them implemented. So one of the biggest challenges that we have a situation where the law is not actually followed. And also we have these other laws that are passed that you really see that they restrict civic freedoms that would have enabled or would have made the landscape look positive. So our landscape right now as we talk can best be described as a road with humps, with potholes, with bumps, but with no signposts, with no traffic signs to indicate that you are entering into a sharp corner, and therefore anytime you might find yourself in an accident, a fatal one.
Great insight there. You talk about so many other things. Talk about funding of civil society. You talk about the roads, the bumps. I could say the famous potholes here in Kampala. But amidst all this political terrain, how is civil society really trying to come out and be against these violations? I know it's really not a rosy area to talk about, especially now that the state kind of brands civil society as enablers of foreign agencies and so many other things. But how are you faring through all these turbulences?
So within the limited resources that we currently have, we continue to play our cardinal role. One, we have civil society that is trying to empower citizens, one, to know their rights, be able to demand and defend them. So that is civic awareness, especially on their political liberties or civil liberties. Then we have civil society that specializes in monitoring, documenting, and reporting on human rights issues as they affect the country. And of course, there's advocacy.
Yeah.
Advocacy is done both at a national, regional, and international level. And when we talk about advocacy, is that we're trying to see how can we advocate for better laws and policies that each citizen, including governments, can adhere to, that can create an enabling environment for human rights defenders or civil society organizations to be able to play their role and advance democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. So basically, those are the major issues that civil society organizations are trying to do amidst the challenges that we face right now, more especially so in terms of access to resources.
Yeah, going back to the conversation that we are having, this conversation is premised on the Kawempe North by-election.
Sure.
But I want us to tackle the ingredients that characterized that election in and of itself. We are talking about things like electoral integrity and the militarization of that kind of process. The heavy security presence, people were battered. We also got reports that the armed forces intimidated opposition supporters. How do you speak to the role of the military, especially now that the UPDF the UPDF Act was amended yesterday? How do you speak to the role of the involvement of the UPDF in the electoral processes of this country?
Yeah, the role of the military, which goes up to what we would call the militarization of the public sector. Because ordinarily you wouldn't expect the military to be in this. But even before you go to look at the military and its role in these public affairs, you need to look at also the enabling environment.
Yeah.
That before an election, there are many factors that constitute what you'd call a free and fair election.
Sure.
One, those who are engaged, political actors, should have freedom of association, freedom of assembly. In other words, if you want to campaign or canvass for votes, you should be given an opportunity to go and express your ideas as a candidate to the Kawempe North electorate and tell them what are those ideas that you have as a would-be legislator you want to sell to the people. Yeah. So that freedom should be there. Freedom of association, freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, and freedom of speech. We tend to find that such things are not really available in terms of candidates from the opposing side. And that's a big challenge. Now, when it comes into this other fact of the military, it makes it worse because that's not supposed to be the work of the military.
Actually,
that's work supposed to be of the police. But we see the military involvement, and military are not trained to deal with civilians.
Yeah.
And that's why they tell you their work is they shoot. They don't ask or they just shoot. And that's the biggest challenge we're facing, the militarization of our electoral processes.
Yeah, actually, maybe to take us back to the 2021 general elections, a few weeks, actually there were weeks, it could be like 6 weeks or something, the president appointed I don't know, it could be Lieutenant General Kayanja Muhanga right now, who is the Commander Land Forces. Then he also appointed the now late, he was the IGP at the time. He appointed them to head security in Kampala, which of course Kampala by then was a hotspot for opposition.
Sure.
Yeah. So how does that really speak to the fact that we are witnessing what happened? Of course, remembering that the 18th and 19th, those murders that happened downtown Kampala, very many people died. There was open shooting, live bullets were thrown.
Including enforced disappearances.
Yeah, sure. So what is it that the civil society now, I am putting you on the spot because the civil society to an extent if you engage the public at a deeper length, they will tell you, oh, civil society is just known for lamentations. Yeah. So how is it different now that we are going to the same electoral process, that already we have evidence that it might not really be different from what happened in the last general election?
True. So, as I told you, the work of civil society really is clear-cut.
Yeah.
And we can only do what we can within our means.
Sure.
We do not have an enforcement arm that we can wish to implement what we want to see done in terms of respect for human rights.
Yeah.
So we continue to monitor and document. And as you see, the global world order seems to be changing.
Yeah, sure.
If with the arising of Trump into the presidency in the United States,
Yeah.
even rules-based institutions like the ICC now are under threat.
Yeah.
For example, are you aware that right now, as we engage in this podcast, the chief prosecutor, Mr. Khan of the International Criminal Court, is a sanctioned individual as an international civil servant, that he cannot use his ATM cards, he cannot access emails. No organization would want to work with him or provide information with him for purposes of supporting or enabling the work of the International Criminal Court. And therefore, you make a whole institution paralyzed.
Yeah.
So if a whole International Criminal Court can be paralyzed as a result of sanctions by one major power, it's an indicator that you shouldn't actually be blaming even civil society.
Yeah.
That should show you how the global world order is really changing. The trajectory is actually changing. But to go back to your specific questions, and those who claim that civil society is lamenting, of course they're entitled to their right of, that's their right in terms of the right to opinion. But we continue to play a critical role, one, that we monitor, we document and report on these issues. That at a certain time some people will be held accountable for these atrocities that they continue to undertake during these electoral processes. Yeah. So the work of civil society is clear-cut. We'll continue doing that. And speaking out, of course, in terms of advocacy within the existing mechanisms that are available. As I've told you, with the rise of Trump, the rules-based institutions now seem to be in shambles, in a sense that one superpower. And it goes back also to the context. So what we see in the military, what you see, the role of the military here shows you that whoever will be in charge, whoever who has control over the instruments of coercion like the military, will always be in charge.
Yeah, sure.
So if you have control of the military, it's more important than having majority what? Votes.
Yeah.
Because now votes cease to matter.
Yeah.
What matters are the instruments of coercion.
Yeah.
In other words, you have a force that can force you to do something that you otherwise would not have been able to wish to do, but I'll force you to do that. And that's what the role of this military is, what we are seeing right now.
Yeah. Interestingly, you talked about the international frameworks and how they have also failed in a way to deliver justice, especially as regards to the human rights violations. But stay with me. I will get there at a later time.
Sure.
Stay with me. Still, from the reports from the Kawempe North By-election, we had a 14% voter turnout.
Sure.
Which means I was reading an article of the Observer, I think, which was published in 2022, thereabouts.
Yes.
And the reasons as to why some of the people
didn't turn up,
do not participate in the electoral process is because, one, they are afraid of the whole environment of being battered, and two, they also don't really participate because they really feel the result is already predetermined. So, as you're saying, advocacy. Previously, you talked about advocacy. What is it that civil society should do better this time, so that people own their mandate.
Sure.
I was also seeing Electoral Commission actually today was calling out people to participate in this electoral process, to own it and be a part of it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What we really need to do is, first of all, to understand the dynamics of our society. One, you look at UBO statistics with the recent population census. It will tell you that over 70% of the population of this country are young people, under 30, isn't it?
Yeah.
So can we take advantage of that demographic dividend? That you really educate and empower young people to participate in this electoral process and governance affairs. We're talking of young people knowing their rights, being able to demand and defend them. And once you equip these young people to know their rights, they will be able to demand and defend them at all times. So that's why I think we should focus on that there is a generation that does not know much about the history that you often talk about pre-1986. And that generation has seen, it knows the current president as the future president, as the past president. That is the generation that you need to target now. If we are to change the trajectory of this political landscape and electoral landscape in this country. So by empowering those young people, they will be able to know, demand, and defend their rights. It is a long-term goal, but it's something that you need to start right now. Because as I indicated earlier in my initial submission, we have a legal regime that provides us these constitutional rights. And these rights, by the way, are not given by the state. They are inherent by virtue of us being human beings. So it's only us to really interest young people in understanding and appreciating the governance affairs of their country, and they take charge. Once they take charge, then what you call as lamenting will tend to go away. Civic education is important for these young people to really understand that they should take charge. I see you're a young person, but me, I'm towards my evening years. So at one time, I'll be exit. Now, when you exit, whom do you leave in charge? And that's why it's key today to focus on these young people who constitute a big portion of our population. And I think that the change that we will witness if we are to see reasonable change in this country.
Let's talk about. I know you don't speak for the Electoral Commission. Really, a body that is responsible and has the mandate to manage the elections in this country. But let's try to get into the credibility of EC as an institution. Do you really think it has, to a certain extent, underplayed according to its mandate? And if so, for example, I don't think that a 14% voter turnout would really, you could not or you cannot give credit to an institution that is responsible for managing an election when we have a 14% turnout of the entire population of Kawempe North. What do you think is going on? And if there is anything really that is not going on, has civil society, human rights defenders, in which I want you to speak to that kind of spectrum, have you engaged on with EC to try and patch these gaps?
I think civil society has done its part. And I think this question was settled by the Supreme Court orders in terms of the electoral petition of 2021, where Amamba, I think Samambas who took the presidential election, Amambas versus the Republic of Uganda and Genome 7, in terms of the reforms, the necessary reforms that are supposed to be put in place before the next electoral cycle. And one had to do with the electoral management body, the Electoral Commission. In terms of the way they appoint its members, there is less public participation. All we know that the president appoints members and they are vetted or approved by the parliamentary committee of parliament. So there is little public participation in electing or appointing these members of the commission. Two, the funding levels of this electoral management body is so low such that it is not able to carry out civic education. And it has not been able, through its innovative ideas, to attract even external funding from others. And one reason that is attributed to lack of funding from external sources is simply because the confidence and trust is low by both the public and international partners. And this all goes back to how are the members of the electoral management constituted? How are they appointed? The appointing authority, who is also a candidate in elections, is the one appointing.
But
what do you expect them to do?
But again, that body is I think it is vetted by Parliament.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a legal process that they pass through. We could challenge the appointing authority of such an entity who is also an incumbent in an election, but the fact that they are vetted and it is a legally constituted really institution at the end of the day.
Yes, it's true they are vetted, but we would want to see some comprehensive vetting where we invite the public or to invite candidates to apply for these jobs. And that will mean that the public, or to receive comments from the public before anyone is appointed as a member of such an important body.
Sure. Interesting. As we head into a short break, going into a short breather, allow me inform you, all our esteemed viewers, that this podcast and so many other series are always on YouTube. You can find us, the Policy Digest. You can also find us at the Podbean, but also you can get snippets of these particular conversations on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you so much for always watching. I will be back shortly.
Let's talk about human rights. Human rights are the basic freedoms and protections that belong to every person simply because they are human. These include the right to speak your mind, to meet peacefully with others, to participate in decisions that affect your life, and to live with dignity and fairness. They are not special privileges, they are legal guarantees found in Uganda's 1995 Constitution and international treaties. Human rights matter in everyday life, from being heard in your community to accessing public services to feeling safe online or offline. The Civic Space Initiative is here to help people understand, protect, and use these rights. Through education, training, and dialogue, we are building a stronger, more informed society where people can stand up, speak out, and shape their future. Because when you know your rights, you can claim them. Learn more at www.sepa.or.ug or www.asf.be.
Welcome back, our esteemed viewers and listeners. With me again is Mr. Kirenga Robert, the Executive Director of the Uganda Human Rights,
National
Coalition of Uganda Human Rights Defenders. Robert, before we went for the break, we talked about something to do with the international frameworks. We have seen the international community, to a certain extent, issue sanctions for some of our military leaders. But then, how do you speak to the continued even suppression of the same military outfit that has to still batter people even during an election? But then, should we say that lessons are not learned, or it is bigger than themselves?
So sanctions, really, for them to be effective and bite, they need to target the command structure.
Yeah.
By the time the United States government or the European Union decides to sanction you, they have already weighed and measured, and then that these sanctions will affect this person. But if you are going to impose sanctions to a foot policeman or foot soldier, it has no effect. You might find it does not have even a passport. He has never flown a plane. He has no bank account. So you target those who are in command control or command structure, so that because they're the ones who issue these unlawful orders. So that's the group that normally is targeted. And to be honest with you, they work. You need to only meet someone who has been sanctioned, and how it tells you no bank wants to associate with you. You go to buy something, someone says, so no, you are listed as someone who we can do. Because once you do any transaction with such a person, you are heavily fined. So it paralyzes you as an individual. So it only paralyzes those who already have. But if it is some common constable or ordinary soldier who has nothing, the sanctions have no effect on such a person, because there is nothing to sanction about him. So they can work. The issue is that how does it translate into people's civil liberties being able to change? Maybe in the long run, others can learn a lesson and refrain from committing such atrocities.
Or the target is not really, the target might be in, the target of the sanctions might be in the right direction, but then certain people have not been sanctioned.
That's also also correct.
Especially the command structure.
The command structure, that's true.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Uganda Human Rights Commission.
Yes.
Recently, everyone on social media is saying, kudos to this institution, because at a certain point, people believed that there was some sort of inaction from this institution. Because I remember even after the Kawempe North By-election, the journalists who were beaten by the Joint Task Force, the JAT guys, they had to report to the Uganda Human Rights Commission. Of course, the institution issued a statement, but then how do these statements at the end of the day work? Because for example, in the previous, I could say 3 or 1 or a month, not like in a month, my count gets me to something like four statements that have been really very vocal, especially since the disappearance of Edward Sebufu, the commonly known Eddie Mutwe. What is it that you have to say in regards to that?
Well, you see, as the Uganda Human Rights Commission is a national human rights institution. In other words, it's a state institution. It is a constitutional body and also operationalized by an act of parliament. The law or the constitution gives them powers to enable it to do its work. Unfortunately, it has no enforcement arm. So it can issue a release order, but does not have the capacity to enforce that release. It's other state actors like the police that are supposed to enforce that court order. So for me, I give credit to them, the mere fact that they have the courage to issue such a release order for someone who are illegally detained. It can only work within its means. If it is not well resourced, if the appointing authority does not look into the issues that the commission itself identifies as obstacles to human rights protection and promotion, then you can only blame the appointing authority, because you play your work and you do your work within the established laws and policies. So if you say that they have powers to release any person whom they are satisfied that is illegally detained, that's what they can do by issuing a release order. So we would encourage the commission to continue doing that and to release as many and to visit many detention places where you are likely to find many young people detained and due process of the law is not being followed, so that they can issue this. The beauty about these orders or reports by the commission is that then the government becomes is placed in a difficult position to denounce them, because this is a state institution. If it was a civil society organization, they can always dismiss them. Or if it is any other international NGO. But the mere fact that it's their own institution, a state institution, saying that, then it gives credibility to whatever we're highlighting or what they're highlighting. And that's the difference that it makes.
Yeah,
Some people have wanted it to act like a force itself.
Yeah,
But the law does not give it those powers.
Yeah.
It gives it limited powers and says that it can issue a release order. How you enforce that release order is another matter, is another institution.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that you pointed it out, especially for people who have criticized the commission and saying, there is some sort of inaction from their end. But speaking of enforcement, I understand your organization also does independent investigations, especially when we have these elections, when we have these brutalities. Who do you report to? You also said that you document, but at the end of the day, who is responsible for the enforcement still of your findings? Yeah, is it more of a dialogue thing? Do you dialogue with people who are responsible, or you just table your reports and you've done your work?
Yeah, so we as the National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders, we're a coalition. So we're a loose body that brings together over 200 organizations that work on human rights protection and promotion. So our clientele basically, and when we are talking about reporting violations, we are looking at violations that are infringing on human rights defenders, not every citizen. Human rights defenders. So that's our clientele. And the human rights defender has been defined by the United Nations as any individual whose actions contribute to the protection and promotion of human rights using non-violence. So any individual whose action contributes to protecting or promoting human rights using non-violence or peaceful means qualifies to be a human rights defender. And those are our clients. So if in the course of his or her duties, he is faced with threats or attacks, then we come in to provide. So the reports we're talking about are specific to that clientele, human rights defenders. An example are the journalists. When journalists are covering stories to do with the electoral processes, and they are under threat in such a way that they have been beaten, they've been tortured, or they've been arrested, their gadgets, their cameras have been destroyed or confiscated, or the cards are erased, then we come in to support them. Because those are human rights defenders. So that's our clientele.
How about independent activists? Still who do not use...
Independent activists would also fall as human rights defenders. One condition, though, is that our legal framework, the NGO Act, prohibits us from providing or supporting anyone who is involved in partisan campaigns. So let's say you are a human rights defender. What you're doing clearly shows that you're doing work, but at the same time you come out with your partisan colors. Then legally, you don't fall within our ambit.
Yeah, because it actually also speaks to the amendments with the NGO Act as well. Talking of amendments, these past few weeks have been amendments of the almost policy. So could it also be a target on the side of civil society that your clientele is clearly defined by the state, so that you do not expound on
our catchment area?
Yes,
that's true, and that's why you see laws are put there to restrict society. Whereas for us, would want laws that enable you to be able to do work. You see, even this UPDF Act that has just been amended, or the bill that has just been passed by Parliament, if you had trust in the institutions, you would have no problem with it. But the character of the state is such that they have used these laws to harass, bring down what would qualify as opposition leaders.
Yeah.
If you really knew that the people that often arrested were involved, had arms or whatever, you as an ordinary person would have no problem. But you tend to notice that people who are arrested and paraded before the military tribunal are political actors. So it shows you that the citizens have no trust in such mechanisms.
Because there is also, I don't think there is a really thin line, or there is really a bigger line between an activist and
A human rights defender.
and no, an activist and a political, for example, like you said, someone who is affiliated to a certain political party, because they are all in the business of activism.
That's true.
So how you differentiate the two, especially as regards, for example, I could say this lawyer, Ellen Kiza. I don't think Ellen Kiza has ever come out and said, "Oh, I am pro this party."
Yeah.
Not really, but yeah, he was tried in the General Court Martial.
True.
So how that works, I don't know, but maybe it is also a curtailment on the other part of the NGO Act as well.
So the whole thing is like this. Upon being arrested by state authorities, if you are to be paraded before the military court-martial or military tribunal, the whole thing is to link you to those exceptional circumstances. That we actually found you with bullets. We actually found you with a gun. Now the burden is on you. So you actually, whereas the burden of proof is on the one who has arrested you and prosecuting you, you will also have to be put to your defense to say that I actually don't have a gun. Let me give you an example. I can't come here in this institution. Aren't I at the Center for Police Analysis?
Yeah.
Did you check my car?
Not really.
Not really. Aren't I in my office?
Yeah.
If, for example, I carried with myself a weapon, wouldn't we all be taken right now?
Sure.
And charged that you have found? Those are the exceptional circumstances.
Yeah, sure. Interesting.
That's what they call. So it has made the catchment area so wide that we are going to see many civilians being tried, especially as we go into a political
season.
That is, the legislation is put there to really restrict and control citizens.
I think that really speaks to the trajectory of 2026 going forward. But to rewind, maybe going back to still the election that we are benchmarking on, the president admitted that he spent at least 2 billion Uganda shillings.
Yes.
In Kawempe North.
In Kawempe, yes.
Yes. And the NRM candidate was Farida Nambi. How is this commercialization of politics, being viewed, especially from your people that who sit in civil society and make policy, make advice on how we should proceed? Because I see it's a trigger for violence. That's one. Yes, people fight even among themselves. So how should we go on? How should we carry forward with such a precedent?
So there is a generation, as I indicated to you, that we should forget about.
Yeah.
Because the current electoral system, processes, and what we are witnessing is such that it's exclusive. In other words, politics or leadership is now for the rich.
Yeah.
If you can spend 2 billion shillings, you can as well use it to do your own business at home. You don't have to go. The question is, when some people use these lots of money, where do you expect them to recover this money after? That's how corruption comes in.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I was telling you. For every journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. I think there's a new generation that we should expect that will clean up this system. The current generation is a gone one.
Yeah.
You can't expect to change them. And that's why I tell you, if we can make use of the demographics that we have, young people, and avoid shortcuts. In Uganda, people are very interested in shortcuts.
Sure.
And shortcuts can be very dangerous. We are better off building up a system composed of this young population that is over 70% under 30.
Yeah.
That is a very productive age. To use them to change this trajectory we're talking about. It's a long-term goal, but a journey of 1,000 miles, as I indicated, starts with one step. But the current political class and culture is one that you can't change. It is a culture of mfunirawa. What can I get within this? And that's why when Parliament is going to sit and discuss such an important legislation of amending a UPDF Act to allow civilians to be tried in Meko, somewhere they are called and given how much shillings?
100 million.
Do you know what 100 million shillings can do in transforming the lives of peasants? If you went to your village, to your parish, your village or parish, and identified 3 or 10 households that are good at production, farming, and you give each one of them 100 million, how they would transform the village?
Especially now that we are with the parish development.
That's why I'm telling you that this kind of political class is a gone case. We should just see how we wind it up and we look for it. It will take time, but that's the best we can do.
Interestingly, even talking about the commercialization of politics and the principles that come thereafter it, in 2022, an organization called ACFIM released a report that for any one person to engage in an electoral process as a Ugandan member of parliament.
Yes, and to succeed.
Not to succeed, just to be counted to participate.
As a candidate.
Yeah, you must have 1 billion Ugandan shillings that you're going to spend.
So how many can raise 1 billion shillings?
Which is very telling, because trust me, it is very telling, because you're going to spend the 1 billion, but you're not even sure whether you're going to win.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So that shows you how now politics becomes very exclusive.
Yeah.
Exclusive in sense it's for those who have resources. What about those who want to lead but are not have that money to dish out? You are left out. You get it?
Yeah.
So it becomes an exclusive cast for the rich who will make policies to advance their own interest and not the interest of the majority citizens. And that's why I tell you, we need a total overhaul by involving young people into the governance affairs of their country.
Yeah.
Because they will soon take charge. But if they take charge, how prepared are they?
Yeah, as we try to wind up.
Sure.
We have talked about attacks on civilians, on journalists. We have not really talked about how, to a certain extent, civil society is trying to maneuver also on the end of being attacked, being labeled as foreign, as foreign agents in courts. How are you faring through all this? Have you been a target at a certain point? If so, how are you trying to really cultivate a relationship where you will, one, advance the rights of your clientele, but also be at good terms with the leadership structure and the status quo?
Yeah, I think, Timothy, that one we have accepted. Those are what we call occupational hazards.
Yeah.
The job that we do as civil society. You are bound to be called foreign agents of foreign masters, but who is not funded foreign? Our governments also get loans. They also get funded in terms of grants from foreign governments. So that is something that we're used to. Yeah. The most important thing is that are we doing whatever we do in a very transparent manner? Are we doing what we're licensed to do by the NGO Bureau? That's the most important thing.
Yes.
And if we keep on what we're doing, then we are good to go. And there's nothing that really is our appeal is for civic the citizens to join us in demanding for better governance, better promotion and protection of human rights, better observance of the rule of law, and due processes. That is all we are requiring from. I can assure you that now that this parliament has passed this UPDF Act, I can assure you in the next batch of you are going to see a very high turnover of the current MPs not returning in the House.
Interesting, we have also not talked about the political parties and organizations amendment bill that was also passed. but we'll expound on that.
Sure.
But as we wind up and as you give your parting shots, really, the fact that you get this structure, you now have this outlook of what we expect come 2026. What is it that you're doing? Any reforms, any policy recommendations?
Sure.
Yeah.
Reforms, we have no control over that in terms of legislation and policies.
Yeah.
We can advocate to have better laws and policies. But in terms of our constituency, we are preparing them. One, through capacity building, what we would call security, personal safety and security. If you are a journalist and you are going to cover a riot or an electoral campaign, how do you position yourself to ensure that any obstacles such as security enforcement agencies have no direct attack on you? How do you position yourself? How do you do what we call a security risk assessment? Because you can never avoid risks, but how do you mitigate that? How do you ensure that if I'm going to cover a story, I am positioned in a safe place, that I'll be able to get out with my gadgets? And two, we continue to provide support to human rights defenders who are under threat or attack, in a sense that we give them support when they have been arrested. We give them legal support if they have been subjected to any human degrading or torture. We treat them, but basically it's to prepare them and issuing what we call early warning system. That before you set off from Ntinda to go to Kawempe, you know what kind of law enforcement has been deployed. Is it military? Is it the ordinary police? Where am I going to stand? Am I going to stand with the campaigners? Am I going to stand with the electorate? Am I going to position myself behind the law enforcement agencies who are trying to push back the rest? So it's about preparedness.
Thank you so much, Robert, for putting to context so many perspectives around policy reform, around governance and accountability, but above all, human rights monitoring. For our esteemed viewers, once again, if you are interested and you want to follow these conversations, you will find us on Podbean, on YouTube. Our snippets are on TikTok and Instagram. Follow us, like some of these conversations, but also subscribe. We are also the home of Parliament Watch Uganda. So we'll be here to give you so much more as we continue to get into the forthcoming 2026 general elections. I'll see you when you see us.
Why should we care about human rights? Because they are the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace. Human rights ensure that every person, no matter who they are, has the right to express an opinion, belong to a group, take part in their country's decisions, and live with dignity. These rights protect us all, in schools, in communities, at workplaces, online, and in public life. When human rights are respected, societies are fairer, safer, and more inclusive. But when they're ignored or abused, people lose their voice and their power. The Civic Space Initiative exists to make sure that doesn't happen. Together with communities, civil society, and institutions, we are strengthening the knowledge and tools needed to defend civic freedoms and uphold the rule of law. Because when human rights thrive, everyone benefits. Visit www.sepa.or.ug or www.asf.be to find out how you can be part of the movement to protect and promote human dignity. Your rights, your voice, your future. This message is brought to you by the Center for Policy Analysis together with ASF in partnership with the Belgian Partner in Development.
Thank you for listening to the Policy Digest podcast, the Center for Policy Analysis podcast that is profiling African ideas and people that are shaping the future of their communities. Subscribe to all our platforms on YouTube and Podbean.